Hi everybody, this is Mrs. Jennings and this is our screencast on the heart, which is a part of the cardiovascular system. By the time I finish going over this screencast, you should be able to know the function of the heart, the components of the heart, structures of the heart that include the chambers, valves, and blood vessels, as well as the direction of blood flow through the heart. So let's get started. The cardiovascular system, as we learned in class, includes the blood, which carries the nutrients and the waste through the body. It's the medium. The blood vessels, which we also learned is the actual structures that blood travels through. And then the heart, which is the pump that pumps the blood through these vessels. And the heart, as you usually see portrayed in pictures, looks something like this. In reality, the human heart looks more of something like this. You'll notice that it has blood vessels lining it. It is contained of a thick muscle. It's about the weight of a pound and the size of your fist and sits pretty much in the center of your chest. Now the heart itself is basically three components that makes the heart be able to function, to perform its function of pumping blood. And one of the components is a mechanical system. And a mechanical system would be the structures that allow the pumping of blood, such as the chambers, and we have 4 chambers in our heart, and the valves here that allow blood to flow only one way as the blood moves through the chambers. And then we also have a component that is plumbing. It could be compared to plumbing. If our heart itself is a muscle, this muscle that you see right here has to also have a blood supply where it's going to be able to get oxygen and get rid of the carbon dioxide. And that cannot happen when the blood is inside the chamber. The blood actually has to get into the capillaries of the muscle. So how it does that is as blood is pumped out of the heart through the aorta, some of that blood enters these arteries, and these arteries actually supply the muscle itself with oxygen. And this is the right coronary artery and the left coronary artery that has other arteries that branch off of it. So mechanical, then plumbing, and the third component that helps the heart to function is the electrical system. Without an electrical system, the contraction of this muscle over here would never happen. And the heart has a really unique ability to send electrical signals without an outside stimulus. The very first place where an electrical stimulus is released is right here, the posterior wall, the right atrium. This is called the SA node. The SA node is also sometimes called the pacemaker of the heart. The pacemaker of the heart, because it sends out signals about 60 to 100 times per minute without an outside stimulus. And those signals then travel through the atria and then travel to this section here in the center of the heart called the AV node. So the AV node then takes that signal and slows it down. It actually has its own automaticity of about 40 to 60 beats a minute. So this is the atrioventricular node, or also called the AV node. Now when you look up here at this diagram here, this is actually an electrocardiogram. It is an electrical picture of what's going on with the electricity of the heart down here. So this very first little bump you see is called a P wave, and the P wave is when the electrical signals are being sent through the atria. And those electrical signals are picked up and displayed as you see right here on this electrocardiogram. Then, as the signal travels down this small section in between the atrioventricular septum here, called the bundle of His, it then will travel down the right and left side of the heart. so that we can send a stimulus for contraction to the right side and to the left side. And so this is called the left bundle branch and the right bundle branch. The left and right bundle branch then divide up into these smaller fibers, as you see right here. These are called Purkinje fibers. So we went from the right and left bundle branches to the Purkinje fibers. And this is the electricity being sent to the bottom part of the heart, the ventricles. And after the electricity is sent, you will get a contraction. Now, where is that shown up here? This really tall spike here is called the QRS wave. The QRS wave is when depolarization, or this electrical signal, is sent to the ventricles. The ventricles then will contract. Now, this wave that you see later is when the ventricles are relaxing. It is when the sodium is moving back to where it needs to be in the cells. It's repolarizing so the cells can get ready for depolarization again. And that's the ventricles repolarizing. Now the atria, after they depolarized, they also repolarized. You just can't see it because it's hidden inside this big, tall QRS wave. This big, tall QRS wave, you remember, is this electrical signal being sent to the ventricles. So this is an electrocardiogram showing the electricity of the heart with each beat. And then this is the actual diagram showing you that electrical pathway with the AV node, the SA node, the bundle of His, the right and left bundles, and then the Purkinje fibers. So we have a mechanical, a plumbing, and an electrical component of the heart that helps it to function. Now, looking at the heart structures specifically, we have 4 chambers. Here's chamber number 1, the right atrium, chamber number 2, the right ventricle, chamber number 3, the left atrium, and chamber number 4, the left ventricle. And blood will flow through those chambers in that order. Now, when it flows through those chambers, it's going to go through this valve, this valve, this valve, and this valve. These are one-way doors. They let blood in one direction and they don't let it go back. And each one of those valves has a name. This valve is the tricuspid valve. It is between the right atrium and the right ventricle. This valve you see coming out of the right ventricle is the pulmonic valve, and it's called the pulmonic valve because when the blood goes through that valve, it's going to the lungs, the pulmonic valve. Now, coming into the left atrium and then going into the left ventricle is another valve, and that is called the mitral valve. Then when blood leaves the left ventricle to go out to the body, it will then enter through another valve, as you see right here, called the aortic valve. The aortic valve. So you have the tricuspid valve, you have the tricuspid valve right here, also sometimes called the right atrial valve. You have the pulmonic valve, you have the mitral valve, and you have the aortic valve going to the aorta. Now, along with these valves, you have blood vessels. So the blood vessels you need to know of the heart are this blood vessel bringing the dirty blood or the deoxygenated blood in from the body into the heart. Both of these open up into the right atrium. So you see the blood coming in here from the top of the body, the blood coming in here from the bottom of the body, and that is the right atrium it's dumping into. These are called the vena cava. Vena cava. They are veins bringing back deoxygenated blood. And specifically, this bottom one is the inferior vena cava, the top one is the superior. Blood then travels through the right side of the heart, and it goes out this blood vessel here. This blood vessel is leading to the lungs. It's blood leaving the heart, so it's an artery, and it's called the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery. Okay, so we've got it going out here and on this side also to the right and left lung. The blood then loses the carbon dioxide. It gets oxygenated. It comes back into the left side of the heart through these blood vessels on this side and these blood vessels over here on the right side. These blood vessels are bringing blood back to the heart, and those would be veins, even though they're carrying oxygenated blood, and those are called the pulmonary veins. So we had the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary veins. Now the pulmonary veins empty the blood into the left atrium, which then travels to the left ventricle through this door, through the mitral valve, and then out to this, the biggest artery in our body, called the aorta. And the aorta will then branch off and send the blood to the rest of the body. So that would be your 4 chambers: right atrium, right ventricle, left atrium, left ventricle, your 4 valves: the tricuspid valve, pulmonic valve, mitral valve, and aortic valve, and the blood vessels: pulmonary artery, pulmonary veins, vena cavas, and the aorta, leading to or from the heart. And the order of the blood starts at the vena cava, to the right atrium, to the right ventricle, to the pulmonary artery, the lungs, comes back in the pulmonary vein, the left atrium, to the left ventricle. And that covers our information that we need to know about the heart, its structures, its function, its components, and how blood flows through it. Be sure you're ready for a quiz tomorrow. And my shout out today goes to the Fort Payne Wildcats as they go into their first playoff game this Friday. I want to give you guys a big shout out for that, and we will be pulling for you.